Welcome to Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities presentation, VR Fee Schedule Update 2022, Provider and Staff Training. This is Jay Burns from the Provider and Contract Management Unit. Today, I'll be joined by Rana Woods, Melanie Seckler, Ginger Scape, and Jennifer Pollard. We'll also be hearing from various central office and field staff from OOD. Today, we're going to discuss why is the fee schedule being updated? How does the fee schedule get updated? What are the specific changes that are being proposed? Who will they help? How will they benefit individuals in Ohio with disabilities, providers, and VR staff? And what's next in this process? We have an image of a large funnel which serves as a metaphor for serving lots of various people's needs with various disabilities, backgrounds, strengths, and interests. And for this funnel, as we start to think about the fee schedule, I'd like you to pause and consider, why do we have a VR fee schedule, and who is the VR fee schedule for? I'd like to say that the VR fee schedule is for everyone. First and foremost, we're thinking about our participants' needs. We have individuals with disabilities across Ohio, and we must think about their needs to find and maintain independence and employment. We want quality services with clear definitions and requirements. We also want to think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We think about agency and program needs. So everything from BSBI to college to career. How can we make sure everyone's programs and specific disability populations have the services they need to be successful? We think about provider needs. The VR fee schedule also defines rates, requirements, and aims to provide clarity about what are the expectations for the services and what are the outcomes of those services. We also have to consider agency budgetary needs, and we do consult with finance, and we do need to make rates that are sustainable. We think about the variety of participants and disability populations we serve and support, and we also think about RSA allowances and reporting requirements. So you'll see here an image of a funnel of a variety of people, sort of funneling into the VR fee schedule to make sure we're considering everyone's needs and how to support everyone. We start by listening first. So when we make a VR fee schedule update, we actually keep a list between different updates of ideas, suggestions, problems, concerns that come up between updates. So when we get to work on the next update, we go back to that list and see where there are opportunities there. We've also had 5 regional stakeholder listening sessions, one for each region in the state, where we've listened to providers and other stakeholders. We've had 2 specific focus sessions, a focus on transition and a focus on BSBI, the Bureau of Services for the Visually Impaired. We've also looked at how remote services have went, which they've really been an interim allowance we've had. So we've always made sure that as we've had those allowances, we've checked to see how they're going for providers, for OOD staff, and for our participants. So through discussions and surveys, we've checked in on how remote services have been. We've also looked at the 2021 VR Comprehensive Statewide Needs Assessment. This is a very detailed document from the Employer and Innovation Services Division that talks about various needs of our participants. We've also looked at the Directors Advisory Group and consulted with them about some new services that we'll be talking about later to enhance employment supports. We've also worked with various offices and divisions within central office. We've had field consultations with counselors, account examiners, caseload assistants, and supervisors in the field. We've also had a VR fee schedule think tank. So all of the different ideas we proposed, we could talk to the people doing the actual work to get input on the pros and cons and how things can be operationalized realistically. Here we have a visual, just a graphic of a group of people at a table talking and listening together. One of the most exciting new changes to the VR fee schedule is new bridge support services. This is a whole new menu of services that help support and enhance engagement in employment and VR services. We've looked very closely at the Comprehensive Statewide Needs Assessment by the Employer and Innovation Services, and we've looked at reasons why people have disengaged from services and how can we keep individuals engaged in VR services. We'll be talking about this in more detail. One thing that's come about in this report is also opportunities to support diversity, equity, and inclusion in OD services and outcomes. That report shows that we do not have equitable outcomes in all of our services and employment. So these bridge support services were really designed to keep everyone engaged and have everyone be able to have opportunities to reach that independence and employment outcomes. So we're going to be talking about what employment related services can support individuals. For these new bridge support services, we'll be speaking with the VR Deputy Director, Susan Pugh, who will talk with us more about the concept of these services and how they'll support our individuals. And then we'll be hearing from Ginger Scaife, who will be talking in more detail about how these services work, what they are in detail, and how they could be authorized for individuals.
The idea of the bridge support services is to fill in some of those gaps of unmet needs. So whether that is help getting work clothes, going shopping and picking out the right clothes, whether that's getting their ID that they need in order to work. Some of these things can be really difficult to navigate for the people that we serve. And the bridge support services are designed to help give people a little bit more support. We want them to persevere, to work their way through these barriers and continue working with us towards their employment goals. And those bridge support services are designed to help give them that extra support so that they stick with it and stay engaged with the VR process.
I'm Ginger Scaife, and as you just heard from Susan Pugh, we're going to be talking about bridge support services. And part of that CSNA, or Comprehensive Statewide Needs Assessment, it identified barriers or challenges, including lack of childcare, transportation issues, access to the internet, training, educational barriers, and assistance into getting benefits for food and housing. And some ways we can circumvent that is we want to provide engagement in services, participation, obtainment of employment, social engagement, being part of the community, self-esteem, and purpose. And you can see here on the left side, there is a person or some persons navigating some waters moving upstream, trying to navigate those barriers. On this slide here, you can see a graphic of bridge support services, and it's a bridge that is over some water. Bridge support services are going to be abbreviated BSS and are intended to enhance participant engagement and to focus directly on employment supports through short-term support to overcome significant barriers to employment. These services are not intended as ongoing services or to mimic, duplicate, or supplement case management services that may be available from other sources, such as mental health and local county board of developmental disability services. Right now, let's hear from vocational rehabilitation supervisor Katie Karwatsky as she talks about why access is so important for OOD individuals and how bridge support services can help.
Many of our participants face barriers that are really outside of the traditional VR services that relate to really access of resources or just being able to navigate the world in this new ever evolving technology. Digital things are just very fast changing, and many of our participants are kind of getting left behind in ways that our traditional services they don't address. So the bridge services offer us a way that we can get these folks access to resources or access to this, just the basic needs that they have that will free them up to be able to job search, that will allow them to fully participate in VR services.
When talking about bridge support services and how they're authorized, they may be authorized for an initial 4 hours or 40 units of service in any category, with additional units of service or UOS authorized on an individual basis by the referring VR staff or VR contractor. Independent participant completion and comparable benefits should be considered ahead of authorizing for these services. Use of online resources are encouraged as part of these services. And also on this slide, you can see the same graphic as in the previous slide that shows another graphic of a bridge over waters for bridge support services. On this slide, there is a graphic showing a drawing of a bridge, a drawbridge with multiple lanes. And we're going to talk about the different categories of bridge support services. The first one is identification, ID, obtainment, or replacement. The second is work clothing assistance. And the third is community connections. This service includes connecting participants with community resources to address significant barriers such as accessing childcare, addressing homelessness, for example. Services in the subcategory also include assistance in obtaining mental health case management, securing childcare services, setting up a bank account, securing housing, obtaining interview clothing, or applying for services with other community agencies such as Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program or SNAP, Women, Infant, and Children's Program or WIC, or Medicaid. On this slide, there's a graphic of a couple of individuals standing outside an educational institution. For these fourth and fifth bridge support services, the fourth is training preparation and support. This service is to assist participants with applying for post-secondary training and completing any required application documentation and/or FAFSA documentation as needed or required when other assistance like school guidance counselors or a financial aid office, parent, case manager, or independent completion is not always available or feasible. The fifth and final category of bridge support services is training exploration. This service may be used to research academic post-secondary programs, complete college entrance applications, assist with college visits, assist with the initial class registration, visit student disability service offices, and so on when other assistants, as described above, like school guidance counselors, parents, admissions officers, or a person themselves, is not available or feasible to complete this. Next, we're going to hear from Program Administrator Kristen Garrett, along with Vocational Rehabilitation Counselor Emilio Lebron, as they talk about how students will be able to utilize these specific bridge support services.
Well, I am really excited about these two additional services related to all of post-secondary students, including college students and students seeking additional credentials. I definitely foresee college to careers counselors seeing this as an opportunity, as well as all of our liaison counselors to schools across Ohio and any counselor working with a student seeking additional training after high school. And so, specifically, talking about the training preparation support. So, kind of bridging that gap for students that need assistance applying for the FAFSA and completing the FAFSA and some of the technical questions and pieces of information they need to obtain, as well as the training exploration option, which is kind of more getting specific into what do students want to do, researching different educational programs, actual college visits. So thinking of students that might not have access to resources to be able to visit a school and go through that process that students should be able to do and help them make that decision, having a support there with them and having counselors also have that additional layer of support of a provider to be able to do these types of things. Registering for classes, visiting those support offices. We know our counselors do a great job already working with secondary students, but this is just an additional layer of support to help bridge that gap for students with disabilities that might not have access to these types of things, either through the community or through their families. We want to make sure that we're providing everything that is needed so that they feel like they have all the information to be able to make great decisions.
I'm very excited to see services like this expanding, especially for our students. I feel like students are really becoming a fast growing uh, community for OOD as far as the types of participants that we are serving. Of course, we serve such a wide range. of participants, but to see just an increase of engagement from students before they even exit high school, wanting to get with these services and, wanting to receive these supports to help them, feel like they're not alone going into employment. I feel that that really is what's going to drive up engagement, is where they feel like it's a support that they can lean on without having to be a much longer commitment, like our more traditional services would be.
Getting back to Bridge Support Services VR authorization guidance, VR staff shall authorize for the specific bridge support services the participant requires. The initial authorization should be for 40 units of service, and additional units of service may be authorized based on individual need. Bridge Support Services, or BSS, are available for pre-plan but must be included on an IPE or individualized plan for employment if the person already has one. Please be sure to select in support of Pre-ETS category when applicable. We have a couple of examples here about how an authorization needs to be done. For example, in number one, Mason is authorized for bridge support services. If that's all that says on the authorization where the units of service is missing, as well as the specific service or the services being requested, that would not be appropriate. But in example two, where it says Mason is authorized for 40 units of service for bridge support services, ID obtainment or replacement, and 40 units of service for bridge support services, work clothing assistance. You have the units of service listed out and the specific bridge support services categories that are being authorized for. Finally, for providers who are approved to provide VR fee schedule services, they may apply to provide bridge support services in the Provider Management Program, also known as the PMP, before they can be authorized. Approved providers of core VR services, such as job development and job coaching, may select from any or all bridge support services they would like to provide to participants. A new Bridge Support Services Provider form or service report will be available by October 1st. Let's go ahead and turn it over to Ronna Woods.
Thanks, Ginger. I'm Ronna Woods, and I'm going to start talking about informed choice. In this slide, we have an image of 3 doors. One is red, one is green, and one is yellow, and all 3 have a question mark on it to symbolize showing that a participant sometimes doesn't know which door to go into. So when documenting informed choice, it's very important to remember that participants and, if applicable, the participant's representative shall be informed of the opportunities to exercise informed choice throughout the VR process, including the availability of support services for those who require assistance in exercising informed choice. Participants and, if applicable, the participant's representative shall be provided with data-driven information and resources to assist them in exercising their informed choice throughout the VR process. VR staff and VR contractors shall provide information in a fair and equitable manner and shall not interject personal bias into the informed choice discussion. For more information regarding this, please refer to Vocational Rehabilitation VR Informed Choice Policy, number 80-VR-07. Tools include the provider search, provider scorecard, VR selection of a provider information sheet, the provider who we are statements, provider websites, and conversations with providers. It's very important to remember that informed choice for provider selection must be documented in AWARE, including during the assessment process. Continuing on with the discussion of documenting informed choice, we have another image here of an individual with a bunch of, like a huge file in front of them and putting the files away. VR staff or VR contractor shall document informed choice in the AWARE case record throughout the VR process. Informed choice documentation shall include the following components: information and resources provided, specific options discussed, the individuals and, as applicable, the individual's representative input and response, and outcome of the discussion, including the reason or reasons an option was selected. Again, please refer to Vocational Rehabilitation VR Informed Choice Procedure, and that one is 80-VR-07-01. Finally, Program Administrator Elena Evans offers us a final reminder about informed choice and assessment services.
I would just put out a reminder that we do have assessment services that are available on the VR fee schedule, and to make sure that we are providing informed choice about the different opportunities that are available in the different services that are available to meet individuals' needs.
Moving on to intakes. We now have an expanded use of intakes that allows for more consistent customer service and participant experiences. The definition has moved away from credentials and focuses on intakes as the initial provider and participant meeting ahead of the vocational rehabilitation services. During this meeting, the provider shall review referral information, discuss the participant's disability strengths, and any limitations and/or required accommodations. The provider shall provide an overview of items such as confidentiality, ethics, dispute resolution, etc. Services eligible for intake. These are the following services that are eligible for intake: site coordination, site development, community-based assessment, vocational evaluation, vocational consultation, career exploration, activities of daily living, non-credential, activities of daily living, credential, orientation and site mobility, site development, orientation mobility training, travel training, summer youth work experience, rehabilitation technology, work adjustment, on-the-job supports, job seeking skills training, job development units of service, job development performance-based, job development supported employment, and job readiness training. The new services that have been added eligible for intake include activities of daily living credential, orientation mobility site development and orientation mobility training, and rehabilitation technology. Supported employment job development. We have an image on this slide of an individual holding a tree, getting ready to plant that tree. For supported employment job development, language has been added to note that providers approved to deliver supported employment job development must offer and be able to provide ongoing support after OOD case closure to comply with this service delivery model. Beginning October 1st, supported employment job development authorizations will designate if the service is in support of participants connected with a DD board, or if the service is connected to the individual placement or support, or IPS model, to support individuals with mental health and substance use disorders. This will be one way for OOD and providers to capture the number of participants who are receiving supported employment job development. Marking the individual with IPS supported employment on the special programs page in Aware is another way staff will identify individuals who apply for VR services and are working with an IPS supported employment provider. For VR staff authorization guidance, please select DD-supported employment job development or IPS-supported employment job development when drafting your related authorizations. Program Administrator Jan Mader talks about how OD will be differentiating between supported employments.
We are going to be differentiating also when we do supported employment job development, whether it's IPS supported employment, which is the mental health track, or DD eligible supported employment, which is going to be through the DD boards and schools, individuals who are qualified for DD services at their local boards. So I think that'll be also a helpful way for staff to kind of track who they're serving and for us to be able to see just the different populations that we're serving around Ohio.
Moving on to the Ohio ISP. We have an image of a blue box, and inside the box says the Ohio ISP. Providers and VR staff working with participants connected with their local county board of developmental disabilities should be familiar with the new Ohio ISP, or Individual Service Plan, document and its use. Built on the Charting the Life Course core belief that all people have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations, the Ohio ISP places the needs of the person receiving services in the center of the planning process. The person leads the planning process by making choices, setting goals, and deciding how they want to live their life. The Ohio ISP is a detailed document which covers areas specific to the individual, such as their communication skills and preferences, their likes and dislikes, decision-making, safety and security, and supervision considerations. It should be used in conjunction with service planning for individuals connected with DD boards from the intake going forward. When VR staff are working with individuals who have an ISP, this should be reflected in their referral to a CRP document when authorizing for a provider service. If a provider asks for a copy of the ISP, it may be shared with the provider with the verbal consent of the individual and family for full transparency and informed choice. DODD shared that the full implementation of the Ohio ISP online access system is expected by January of 2024. This will include an IT solution where members of an individual's team, including team members outside of the County Board of DD, will be able to access the ISP directly in the system. This will help make it easier for team members to access this information. Moving on to pre-employment transition services. The 5 pre-ETS subcategories can have corresponding initial intake type activities and coordination, combined into one pre-ETS coordination service for ease of authorization and billing. Students who have had a pre-ETS coordination service are eligible to receive a full intake later in their case in conjunction with other services. The base rate for pre-ETS is being increased by 8%. Additional language notes that hours may be authorized beyond the initial recommended hours based on student need. For VR staff authorization guidance, pre-ETS coordination is available to both potentially eligible or PE students with disabilities and VR eligible students with disabilities pre-plan. This service must otherwise be on the IPE. Starting October 1st, pre-ETS subcategory authorizations will be moving to a monthly model. Written guidance is to follow. It is also important to remember that pre-ETS coordination may be authorized once per school year. And I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Melanie Suckler.
Thank you, Rana. We're going to give a little overview on summer youth. So our summer youth services have moved away from the Summer Youth Career Exploration Service, and OOD has added another level of summer youth work experience to allow for a 10 to 12 hours per week work experience as another option for students. Students who receive this level 1 summer youth work experience are able to later participate in the more traditional level 2 summer youth work experience for 18 to 20 hours per week as needed. Students do not have to complete a level 1 to participate in level 2. So again, level 1 will be 10 to 12 hours per week, and it may be structured between 2 to 5 weeks. And level 2 is more of a standard summer. It will be 18 to 20 hours per week, and it shall be authorized for 5 weeks. Next, Senior Vocational Rehabilitation Counselor Barbara Cartwright talks about how the Level 1 Summer Youth Work Experience can benefit students.
Well, I think it would be a nice introduction to summer youth. We talk to students a good deal about getting that first job, that first paycheck, having that first time that you're working with a coworker. So it would be a nice introduction to that process. I think students would then be able to kind of ease into having a an authentic work experience.
Now let's review some examples of summer youth. So in our first example, example A, Emily has babysat for her neighbors before and expressed interest in working in the community during the summer. She and her family discuss options for the summer with her counselor, and she decides to pursue a standard summer youth work experience at 20 hours a week for 5 weeks. She is referred for summer youth work experience at a level 2. In example B, Mason does not have any work experience, but discussed with his family and counselor that he may not yet have the focus for 20 hours a week for the 5 weeks. He says he finds the idea overwhelming, but he would like to dip his toe into the world of work by starting out with fewer hours for fewer weeks. He is referred to a provider offering 10 hours a week for 4 weeks for a starter summer youth work experience, level 1. It may be possible that the following summer, Mason is ready for traditional level 2 summer youth work experience. And on the slide and the next slide, it's an image of 2 individuals talking to each other. In example C, Noah participated in a starter summer youth work experience level 1 last year. He did well and enjoyed working. This year, he and his family and his counselor have determined he is more ready to participate in a standard summer youth work experience level 2. Noah is referred for a 20 hours a week, 5-week summer youth work experience. And in our final example, example D, Beth participated in a standard summer youth work experience level 2 last year and was able to perform the work tasks well and was praised by the employer. She, her family, and her counselor have determined that she is ready for a summer of working in the community, and she is referred for non-permanent job development to help her obtain a seasonal summer job. A complete summer youth work experience training will be available for providers and VR staff in January 2023. This is just an overview of the VR fee schedule changes. Please look forward to an invitation to that training via email through Provider News and OOD internal communication. Now I'd like to introduce Jennifer Pollard.
Thank you, Melanie. The first subject we're going to discuss is work incentives planning. The work incentives planning service rate has increased from $343 to $471 to reflect the complexities of this service and the qualifications and skills of the staff providing this service. This increase is a 37% increase in the flat fee. Moving on is a new service called the Critical Need Rate, or CNR. OOD has created a critical need rate of $100 that can be authorized in addition to the service area modifier, or the SAM rate, for providing services to participants from a list of underserved counties. OOD will continue what counties/services qualify for the critical need rate. By October 1st, the first list of critical need rate counties and services will be developed and distributed. The list will be shared via email by Provider News for providers and via internal email for VR staff, and archived on the Information for Providers page of the OOD website. Next, Program Manager Berna King will now talk about the critical need rate related to individuals who are blind or visually impaired.
Well, we are hopeful that it's going to get services to some of these counties where we don't have any, we can't get services to right now. And we're also hopeful that maybe in situations where there have been delays, where, providers says, well, I could go, but if I only have one person in this particular county, I can't go for one person. We're hoping that this will help offset that so they can get their services more quickly. And that's gonna help our cases move along more quickly also. It also addresses, we've been hearing and we heard it again this last time we did the statewide needs assessment, that people who are blind and visually impaired aren't getting the services because the providers aren't there. So we are hoping to address that finding as well.
All right. Continuing with critical need rate, initially activities of daily living credentialed, orientation mobility, low vision, braille reading training, rehabilitation technology credentialed, and ASL interpreting will be services that qualify for the CNR in select counties. The CNR shall be authorized in addition to a service area modifier rate. The CNR may be charged once per participant per day by the provider. OOD shall authorize for the CNR prior to service delivery, and CNR shall be authorized for in-person services only. Just a little note for VR staff authorization guidance. On the authorization, note critical need rate, similar to how you would note SAM rate in the draft document or comments. This will be an additional line item on the authorization. The list of services and counties qualifying for the CNR will occasionally change, so please be sure to check the current CNR list before authorizing. Next, Senior Vocation Rehabilitation Counselor Deborah Mendenhall goes into more detail about how the critical need rate can make a difference regarding specific services that individuals who are blind and visually impaired frequently use.
So in the BSVI population, we have a need for specialized services such as orientation mobility or activities of daily living. That's kind of around the house stuff to help people function better independently. These are specialized services as well as the access technology services. And those things are at a premium because they are like the access technology is shared among the BVR and the BSVI participants because BVR may need them for vehicle mods and things like that, whereas BSVI, a lot of our folks utilize access technology in order to access information in a non-visual or adapted visual fashion. And so those services are spread very thin, while in the metropolitan areas, there are more providers available. Typically in the rural areas, you may have a choice of one or none at this time, and we have to utilize a benefit such as the critical need rate in order to provide that service in that area.
Now we're going to discuss American Sign Language and international language interpreting. OOD has expanded the cancellation window for American Sign Language and international language interpreting from 4 to 24 hours to better align with industry standards. OOD has added a shift differential for ASL interpreting that matches the on-the-job support shift differential. And the shift differential applies to services that begin after 9 p.m. or before 5:30 a.m. The shift differential shall apply to the entire time of the service for the date. Now you will hear more from Senior Vocation Rehabilitation Counselor Trista Thompson about how she thinks these upcoming changes to interpreting will positively impact the deaf community.
In closing, during the pandemic, so many services moved online, including interpreting. I am hopeful these changes will increase in-person assignments and also increase the availability of services to support our individuals' communication needs.
With a new fee schedule, we have included an overall rate increase. OOD is including a 2.37% overall rate increase in addition to other updates and increases previously noted. This will be an estimated additional $1.49 million in service investment per year. There's a little arrow on the side showing that there is an increase. The next topic we're going to discuss is startup services. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a little computer laptop for the technology piece. The startup service definition is expanding to allow for support beyond the initial setup. After the initial setup, some participants may need additional assistance learning how to use the technology or with setting up additional services and/or programs. Startup may be used for ongoing support beyond the initial setup. For example, Emily received startup services to begin using her iPad for remote career exploration services via Microsoft Teams. Later in her case, she receives additional startup services to learn how to use Zoom. So VR services have traditionally been provided in person. With COVID, OOD allowed for temporary allowances to provide remote services. We are now moving these allowances to be an ongoing modality for providing services. Remote services will be provided at the same rates as in-person services. As we think about remote services, there are some key points to keep in mind. The first is that we want to keep a focus on customer service and individual appropriateness. We don't necessarily want remote services to be provided to every participant across the board. We want OOD staff and participants to take into account the person's preferences, their abilities, and their needs, and determine if remote services are right for the individual. Remote services are generally meant for local providers to have another modality to provide services. With this, there will be guardrails on the usage, such as what services are able to be provided remotely, and that providers staff will need to be available to meet in person as needed. There may be times that a participant is not able to meet remotely, or there is a need to meet in person. At any time during services, if remote services are determined to not be an appropriate service delivery method by either the participant or OD staff, services can resume as in-person services. The next thing we have added is the holiday shift differential. All 11 federal holidays will receive the shift differential for on-the-job supports and ASL interpreting. The billing form will automatically capture on-the-job supports and interpreting performed over the federal holidays. Nothing different needs to be done on the authorization. The shift differential applies to the actual holidays and not the observed days. Now I'm going to turn it back over to Melanie to discuss self-employment services.
Thank you, Jennifer. Self-employment services, which are currently addendum services, are now going to live in the fee schedule with standardized definitions and rates. There will be benchmark rates for 2 of the services so that providers can be compensated if the participant falls out of service or changes their mind about self-employment before the service is completed. We hope that with these services going into the fee schedule, more providers will be interested in adding them to their menu of services. Staff qualifications are listed in each definition in addition to the reporting requirements. The services that will be listed include self-employment business concept. This is when the participant has a business concept ready to be evaluated. And the outcome of the service is to identify if the participant is ready and has the capacity to pursue self-employment and if the business idea is ready or if it needs more development. We'll have the self-employment feasibility study, business plan writing, and business plan analysis. With the business plan analysis, this is when the participant already has a business plan that they developed or was developed by another entity, and it needs reviewed for completeness and/or quality. And the final service would be self-employment technical assistance. Staff qualifications for these services includes someone with who is a certified business advisor and or has a bachelor's degree in management, operations, public administration, economics, finance, or other business-related field, and or at least 12 months operating their own business, including marketing, financial, and sales responsibilities, so they may be self-employed themselves, and have strong written and verbal communication skills. For providers who have qualified staff interested in providing self-employment services, you may apply for these in the Provider Management Program, or PMP. OOD is allowing texting to be utilized as part of the on-the-job support service and billed in line with current accommodation allowances. Interactive communication via text messaging in situations where the employer did not allow on-the-job supports in person, the participant did not want in-person on-the-job supports, or when on-the-job supports have started to fade, may be billed at a rate of 5 text messages sent by the provider staff per 1 unit of service. OOD will also allow reciprocal texting to be utilized during Tier 3 services to make the required interactive contacts to meet those service goals. And in the picture on this slide, it shows an individual looking down at their phone texting. Next, I'd like to introduce Jay Burns.
Thank you, Melanie. We've certainly covered a lot of ground about the proposed VR fee schedule updates. Let's take a moment to look at how does the VR fee schedule update become Ohio Revised Code? In other words, how do all of these ideas become official? First, we mentioned we listened, brainstormed, and had multiple rounds of feedback and consensus, both with our providers, community stakeholders, and internally. We're very thankful for everyone's contributions to this process, the input, the pain points they've expressed, the opportunities that's led us to. After we have consensus, we then update the final language and rates for the services. Those then move to the Common Sense Initiative. That's the first part of the rulemaking process. At the time of this recording, we've actually moved through the Common Sense Initiative, and this rule is with the Joint Committee on Agency Rule Review, or JCAR. It's under their review, and that involves having public hearings with a target effective date of October 1st. We are moving ahead with the idea that we'll be meeting that October 1st date. If not, we will certainly communicate that out. We do have live Microsoft Teams provider and VR staff Q&A sessions that have already been scheduled. We're also going to be working on the provider forms and service reports that will be updated before October 1st. So that has new services that we've introduced as well as new rates. Those aware service rates have to go into our computer system or case management system called Aware. New services are added, subcategories will be added, and we do that all in consultation with the data and reporting unit. So October 1st is our target implementation date. Just keep in mind, nothing is official and everything is pending the final JCAR approval. As we move forward with the VR fee schedule update, we want to take a moment to talk about ongoing provider support. So certainly this training is available and this training can be returned to or reviewed. We are going to send any needed updates through the provider news updates. That's our Granicus mailing list. We will have a provider manual update that will be released in conjunction with the VR fee schedule updates. We're looking at giving that a little nickname of services and standards guides. If we find there's lots of themes and questions that arise, we may do a frequently asked questions or FAQ that will be developed based on how much need there is, or if we see themes and questioning. And you're welcome to return to the referring VR staff for questions about a specific authorization or a specific case. And case-specific questions can be addressed with those referring staff and local OOD supervision. Feel free to return to these training materials as needed. You're welcome to send any of these materials to any staff, any provider staff, as well as use any of the accompanying copy of the materials, such as a PDF of the PowerPoint. And if the available guidance does not answer any questions or concerns, please feel free to write the team at pcmu@ood.ohio.gov. We also have ongoing support for VR staff as we move toward this VR fee schedule update. Watch for internal communication from our team, the Provider and Contract Management Unit. The provider manual update will also be available to staff. One reason we're giving it the nickname of Services and Standards Guide is actually to make it clear to staff that it's also something that they can use and is accessible for them. We'll also be issuing FAQs to staff as needed if we find there's lots of questions around certain topics or more information we need to provide as we start to implement the VR fee schedule update. You're also welcome to return to these training materials. You can utilize resources, including your direct supervisor or your regional vocational rehabilitation training supervisor. You can reference policies and procedures as needed. And certainly, if the available guidance doesn't answer your question, feel free to reach out to the team at pcmu@ood.ohio.gov. In addition to everyone we've mentioned so far that we'd like to thank, including our providers, our stakeholders, those that have through central office, we'd also like to thank the VR fee schedule think tank committee members. Would also like to thank you to the VR Directors Advisory Group, DAG, early on in conceptualizing the bridge support services or wraparound services. The DAG gave us some real good examples of what those kind of bridge support services might be. as well as the encouragement that we were going on the right track and that these services make a really positive impact to our individuals with disabilities throughout Ohio. We'd also like to give special thanks to everyone on staff who's contributed to our videos throughout this presentation. We really appreciate all their time and expertise and insight. We would also like to give special thanks to the Division of Legal Services. Rick Shands, Chief Legal Counsel, and his team with the Division of Legal Services have helped move this rule proposal through the rulemaking process. Finally, if you have questions, input, final thoughts, feel free to reach out to your regional RPS or write to pcmu@ood.ohio.gov. The Provider and Contract Management Unit Rehabilitation Program Specialist, who you've heard from today and who've offered their expertise and insight, include Rana Woods, covering the Northeast at 216-310-4017, rana.woods@ood.ohio.gov. Melanie Seckler is covering the East Central at 330-203-3670, or melanie.seckler@ood.ohio.gov. Jennifer Pollard is currently covering the Northwest and Southeast. She can be reached at 740-517-3635 or jennifer.pollard@ood.ohio.gov. Ginger Scaife covers the Southwest, and she can be reached at 513-453-2707 or ginger.scaife@ood.ohio.gov. Thank you so much for the time you've taken to attend today's training, and if you're able to join us at the following Q&A sessions. We really appreciate everything our providers and VR staff and central office staff do to support Ohioans with disabilities. Thanks again. Have a great day.